It's the song that shall not be named and not be played in any music store. What's the reason for that? Well, for a good amount of time there, it was the one song that everyone who was learning to play guitar wanted to know how to play, and you heard people playing it in music stores all the time, and usually not so well. But we're not talking about the whole song today. We're here to look at the guitar solo section. You know, that part where the guitar player takes the lead, that thing that wasn't cool anymore after Nirvana came out? Well, let's talk about why a guitar solo doesn't have to suck if you do it right, and welcome to Music with Marky. So what makes the solo in Stairway to Heaven so iconic? Well, there's a few things, but the first one is not something that most anybody thinks of, so I'm going to give you a second to guess what that is here. If you guessed that it has nothing to do with the lead itself, I'm really impressed. What the hell is this old dude talking about? Back when solos were still cool, bands wrote entire parts to go behind the solo. It wasn't just a bunch of flashy notes over the chorus chords or some other part of the song. It was an entire compositional piece, a bridge element, if you will, of the song itself. And this is the first thing that makes the Stairway to Heaven solo so great. It's a piece of music that builds from one part of the music and up to the next part of the music, builds to a climax and raises the energy of the song leading into the vocal. So in case you're not completely familiar with it, let's listen to it and then we'll come back and talk. So if you know the rest of the song, you know that this whole compositional piece underneath is being introduced for the first time here as the solo comes in, and it's taking the song up a level. You've got the basic background chords here, that basic A to G to F, which is actually just played by the bass, and there's a clean guitar underneath it at first. And one of the things that makes this solo so great is that's building to something within the solo itself, not just to the crescendo where the vocals happen, but you have that end part of the solo where he breaks it up and he's got the slide guitar underneath and he's trading measures. He's got like the lead measure, and then you've got that slide part. I'm sorry I don't have a slide here, but it's the... And then he plays the lead part after that. So much drama and feeling and tension is built there by creating that part where it's broken up and it has the other part underneath, and the layers that are happening is just something that Jimmy's an absolute master of. And one other thing I should note here is that the tempo changes at this part. When the part happens, the tempo increases a little bit, and as it gets out through to the end there and out into the vocals, the tempo is going up. And that's something that we've kind of lost in recent years with recording with digital audio workstations and always working to a click and becoming a little bit mechanical about things, which can be cool in its own right. But there are times when increasing or decreasing tempo to take you into whatever the mood of the next part is can be a very powerful songwriting tool and emotionally charged type of tool in your songwriting. Anyway, before we get to the actual lead guitar elements of the song, I do want to say that I put my money where my mouth is, or I try to anyway, and I often write compositional pieces behind my solos. You can check out my Spotify channel or my band's Spotify channel and kind of hear what I'm talking about, that I use the things that I'm talking about on my channel. Now let's look at a couple of the lead elements themselves and talk about how they most definitely do not suck. The solo itself is in A minor, and he's mostly employing the A minor pentatonic, but I love that he's making use of the chords that are going on behind it, being cognizant of it, almost like a jazz player would, and really bringing that F note that's not usually played when you have your pentatonic minor here. Usually you go to the E there, and here you don't use the F. They're not notes that are commonly employed when playing a pentatonic scale, but right away in the opening of the song, he goes right to the F. And then he does it again quickly in passing right in the next phrase. right there in that pull-off sequence. Normally guys would play this E note here. And it pops up again later. He's grabbing at it here and there, and it's a nice little diversion from the usual pentatonics. Another thing I like a lot is his use of timing and not always playing things on the downbeat, which happens all over this solo. The one point right at the beginning where he jumps into that trope riff, this kind of where he jumps into that riff, he's playing it in that one spot in the beginning on the 3 of the measure, and then that whole part with the breaks again behind the slides. Every one of those phrases starts on the and of 1, not on the downbeat. And all over the solo, the timing is very slinky, and he carries over the downbeat, or he plays pauses and then starts in weird spots of the measure. And that's something that a lot of us forget to do. We very often play very much on the downbeat. So a good thing to take away from this, and a great compositional element as well. Another thing that makes the solo great, it builds through the octaves. The entire thing is building emotion to the next part. He started down here in the basic A pentatonic, as we showed before. He's up here next. Later on, he's up here in another position of A. And then at the end of the solo, of course, he's way up at the other octave. It's building, 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 which is something that's very cool. The next element I want to talk about is something that I use very often, and Jimmy's used in some other players, and it's so powerful, and it works really well to get non-musicians, when they're listening to your solos, really get their head bobbing. And that is to play a repetitive phrase over chord changes. So in this instance, with Stairway to Heaven, we've got the... But he repeats that over a couple of measures, plays it 10 times before jumping out of it. And it gives time for the chord progression to happen underneath it, and it really drives the point home with the part and makes people get really into it, especially, as I said, non-musicians. The next thing, and as I said before, he was really good working in the studio and layering and doing tricks. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the solo, during the break parts, he has this one lead break part that has a slide incorporated in it, which he hadn't used at any other part in the song. And that's this part here where he goes from the 10th to the 14th. Again, I don't have a slide, but it's a very slow... It's another really good example of how he wasn't afraid to put the studio to good use and then figured out how to play it live later. And then the last thing, of course, that very simple repetitive pattern again at the end, finally going up to that top octave and playing something that really drives the point home and leads you to the vocal part and the climax of the entire part of the song. And so for those reasons and numerous others that I probably didn't even talk about here, I really feel that the Stairway to Heaven solo is one that is an all-time great and definitely doesn't suck. And there are many things you can take from it and incorporate into your own playing to make your own parts even better. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I get back to everybody as soon as I can. I hope you got something from this lesson. And until next time, guys, keep making great music. Hey friends, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. It makes the whole world better.